Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Geomologist Presents. Today, I have a very special guest. I have Rob Alderman of Pulp Hammock Press. You probably know him for the amazing tome, which I was going to show. I should show. It's on my shelf that I can see. Um, so you will know him for God's. I'm off camera for a little bit. Okay.
You just pass walled. He just phase
Yeah, I
walled.
know. There we go. For Gods of the Forbidden North. This is the volume one, and you can see it's a massive tome. And Rob is on volume three now, correct?
Yes, sir.
Finished the Kickstarter for volume three. Uh, volume one and two have been out for two and a year and 2 years, right? Or 2 years and 1 year, respectively, I think. Or what's the date?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Two and one.
Let me see.
That's about right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I met
Oh
Rob
yeah.
at, is that right?
Yeah, North Texas, right?
Yeah, I met Rob just recently at North Texas RPG Con. That was the first time you went there, right? Yeah, 2023. So yes, 2 years, 2 years for this one, the copyright, and then the I think the volume two just came out, the print in the last fall, right? This
Yep.
past fall.
You
So
got it. Yeah.
so really cool. They're amazing. I have both PDFs, and I was so happy actually that Rob was going to be there so I could get a print copy because I've missed a Kickstarter for the first one, and I'm just catching up with these. So, all right, Rob. So it's for OSE. So I guess that means we got to ask you how you got into this old school. How did you get into OSR? How did you start playing these games that we love so much?
I guess the OSR, I'll do that first, I guess. I got into the OSR by I guess it started with Rapanathuk, Rapanathuk is how I say it. I would say
Okay,
Rapanathuk.
nice.
But I
Bill
heard from
Webb's
Bill.
massive creation. Yeah, it's awesome.
So
Did you
back in
get
the
to
day,
meet him? Did you, or have you
yeah,
met him
I finally
before?
did.
Yeah, he was
Yeah,
at
yeah.
North Texas. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I
cool.
last year I tried to, but I didn't get a chance to. This year I actually got to talk to him twice actually, but
Mhm.
that was really cool because he's like my favorite, probably my favorite creator. I mean, there's other ones I really like too, but I've played and ran his modules, his products more than any other D&D product out there in the world ever. So I'm really a big Necromancer game slash Frog God game fan. Like
That's great.
I love their stuff and I've used it for years. Like I think like 23, 24, 25 times, something like that.
Oh,
It's a lot.
nice. Yeah, I love. I was just looking over the Stoneheart Valley stuff again. Wizard's
Yeah.
Amulet, Crucible Freya. Yeah,
Yeah.
so just the starting point, right, for that massive
Yeah.
campaign. Yeah, but that was like 3.0 though, right? So
Yes.
you run
Yeah.
it at you started at 3.0, or have you run it and
Well,
also
second edition. I
second?
started I started with the very first version of second edition with the easily cover and everything.
Okay.
And that's where I came into the hobby, like right around 99, 1990 to 89,
Hmm.
somewhere around there.
Okay.
I was
Yeah.
born I was born in 82. So
Okay.
it
You're
was like
young
every
and
Boy Scouts, right? Kids play Boy Scouts played D&D and we were on army bases. And
oh
that was
wow.
my dad played Hero Quest, ran it for my brother and I that same summer. And what happened was we kind of fell in love with the whole sword and fantasy thing
Hmm.
and then, like a year or two later, we ran into these kids at Boy Scout camp, all the cool kids at Boy Scouts, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Those don't really go together. You don't hear those often, but you know what
The
I
cool
mean?
the cool Boy Scouts. So in our little
Yeah.
nerd hobby or nerd niche, the cool kids were the Boy Scouts because I guess they had survival skills, right? Maybe I don't know. Did they?
You got it, man.
They could tie knots. I mean, I don't know.
Well, okay, so like in defense of these Boy Scouts being possibly cool, they probably weren't, but our memory, you know how it is. We
Yeah.
remember things better than they are. I I was I was on army bases. My dad was like a SF Ranger guy, like
Oh,
real
nice.
real as they
Yeah, that's
say.
cool.
And so like what happened was all the dads were all these rangers and stuff. So the scoutmasters weren't like civilian guys who
Oh,
like
wow.
yeah, they were guys who like ate worms and killed rabbits with their hand. So they would take us on the army ranges on base to do our
Hmm.
and they treat it like we were young soldiers basically. So
Oh, wow.
it was still nerdy, of course, but like it was pretty cool. You know,
Was
you got
that
to
in the
see
States or in Europe?
in North Carolina,
North
Fort Bragg.
Carolina. Okay. Fort,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, Fort Bragg. Yeah, it was called Fort Bragg and they changed it and now it's back to
Oh,
Fort
they
Bragg,
changed
but
it.
but it's a different Fort Bragg. It's a different Bragg. It's interesting.
Oh, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah.
But
Well, that's
yeah,
cool. Yeah, that's really neat. So
yeah, yeah. That
were
was
you in the military?
I was. Yeah, I
Oh, you
did.
were. Yeah, I was Navy for a
Oh
little bit.
yeah.
So yeah.
So I was on boats in the Army,
Oh,
and the Navy guys used to make fun of us all the time. They
so
would
you're
tell
like
us,
those guys in like Apocalypse Now.
kind of. Well, so like like the World War II boats that would go right up to the beach
Oh,
and like.
Like Higgins boats and stuff, or
So
the
imagine like they have these things now. They're called LSVs. Well, they
yeah, I
probably
know. Mm,
you know them. Okay,
yeah,
so like they're bigger, like 186 feet,
yeah,
like
yeah.
a truck, a light vehicle.
Hmm.
So that's basically what I was on. There were like guys on the deckies, and then guys who were the engine guys. And I was one of the dumb engine guys who just stared at gauges
Hmm.
4 hours out of every 12. And the chief warrant officer, who was well overweight, but nobody would ever do anything to him because he could fix the entire boat.
But you
He'd
know
put it back
those guys
together.
who are really like that, especially in the Navy.
Yeah.
Like I met lots of gunners, gunners mates and CPOs that were quite large. But you know what? You know what they didn't do the running for quals.
They
They
always
would
walked.
swim. No, they would swim,
Oh, they
and they were
still have
good swimmers.
good
That's what's
times.
fascinating. Yeah, because they're buoyant, right? And they were really good swimmers.
Well, yeah. Well, so they would say like, "Hey, boy,
Yeah.
private specialist, whatever it was." It was the same meaning.
Yeah.
They were like, "Hey, if this goes red, or this makes this noise, you
Oh
come
man.
get me right away and get the F out of my way."
All
So
right. That's
that
awesome.
was that was pretty much all I did in the army. I was a big hero.
Yeah. All right.
But
Well,
yeah,
we
the Navy
definitely went
guy.
on a little tangent there. But anyway, so
No, it's okay. It's fun
you played
stuff.
back second edition, and then obviously,
Yeah.
and then I guess you must have played through your military service, I guess, and then in you, college and stuff as well. And
I wasn't able to play pretty much all high school. I would buy books, but just read them and would just
yeah,
sort of and never could. I never found anyone who could play.
hmm
It was the dark times
yeah,
for the Empire.
hmm
Basically, like when I got to college and I right when I got back from the army because I went away and then came back. I was a National Guard guardsman, so I was Army National Guard really. And well, really, I was 4 years Army Reserve and 4 years Army National Guard, but I just tell people Army because you know. So like I turned around and I came back, and when I came back, I started my first third edition game,
mm,
and I had it brought with me to basic and AIT, you know, my all my training from starting out in the military, those three books, the first three volumes of Rapanathuk, Rapanathuk,
hmm
in Lost City of Baracus, Tomb of Abasthor, Wizard's Amulet, you know, the ones you were naming, Crucible of Freya.
yeah,
I would read them and just read them and read them and read them. And so when I got back, I was like, I'm running this. I view those modules as, I mean, I don't know if historically I'm correct. I'm not quoting a source here. I view those as the first OSR products to my knowledge.
yeah,
Um, because to me, even though they weren't OSR rule sets yet, and the OSR thing hadn't popped up, I think it's another year or two later or something. I
mhm.
think that with like Osric maybe, but
Yeah,
I don't
with
know.
Osric. Hmm.
I know, yeah. But basically I was like they were flavored as first edition. That was the thing that captured me when I read those books over and over again was that there was just something about them that was different, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
I think they
the
went away
old
from
school
story.
feel.
Yeah, they went away from story and went back to
Yeah.
emergent dungeon crawl. Maybe not Wizard's Amulet, but the rest of them for sure. They're dungeon crawls. Go
Yeah.
in and out of dungeons. There's a backstory that you might never know as a
Yeah.
player, and it's great for the GM to give, I guess, the NPCs motivation if he wants,
Yeah.
but you don't have to. But it's basically, a dungeon crawl, and
Yeah.
I think it goes, and especially with Rapanathuk, and then when they brought up the world around it, it becomes like a hex crawl, and you never need even. I mean, there's so much material. I remember, well, just looking at those again, there's so much material. You can just wander around the land and
Yeah.
never go into the dungeon, which is a funny story from like I've been running this Hyperborea campaign for about a year,
Great
and they
system.
have yeah, and they have yet to get to like the dungeon that I keep highlighting on the place that they're at.
Making it glow, and they're like,
Yeah,
no.
yeah. And even I mean, if it would, we don't record it, but I know like if we did, I know one of my players would fourth wall it and he'd go, and then we learned about the and he'd look at the camera and go at the dungeon that we weren't supposed to go to that we never go to. But it's pretty funny. But yeah, I think that's what's great about that old school aesthetic. You have these, it's a wilderness crawl. You explore the wilderness, you explore the world, and then you find the locations that you, whether they're big or small location sites to plunder, I guess.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of I was raised like how, like you all back in second edition, everyone would have like a setting that was like their setting,
Right.
and like mine was like I stumbled into Planescape,
That's a
and
nice
and
setting, yeah.
so it was great, but like it's very like story driven
Yeah,
narrative.
and that
Oh,
was I know like I mean I I love the authors who created second edition some of these modules. I played with some of them. I love their stuff, but some of those like for Dark Sun, for example, I mean, it's just you just it's like you're in an Indiana Jones movie. You can just sit back and stuff will happen no matter what you do. Right.
right, and so I wasn't used to like I guess a quote unquote old school style of gaming. And so
Hmm.
when I read them, I fell in love with them. I just emailed you actually a map. I don't know if you could show it, but you could check it out either way. And it's basically when I had bought a couple of those modules like Rapanathuk and Tomb of Abasthor, Wizard's Amulet, Bard's Gate. There was a couple of them. They were all sort of like possibly in the same area, but were kind of like only suggested. What I
Hmm.
did was I created the map I just sent you on my own, I think with like Worldographer or something. And kind of it was my interpretation of those areas all slammed together.
Oh wow.
Eventually I dropped other modules in there from, the Bill Webb group and basically like that's when I started running over and over again. And I kind of fleshed out and made it my own over time. But I've got this huge file of, from like third edition Pathfinder, first edition Osric, like Swords and Wizardry, 5e, like all the different versions
Yeah,
basically.
there you go. There you guys can see. Hopefully, you see the map, you guys. But yeah, there's your map. That I
Yeah. Yeah, so you can kind of see in the bottom right,
yeah
that's Rapanathuk or Rapanathuk, however you guys say it.
yeah down here.
You got Bard's Gate there in the middle, and then to the
Mhm.
left, kind of in the center, a little bit down, is like the Fair Hill and Crucible of Freya, and
Wow, yeah,
so like I that was how I assembled them together.
it's pretty close.
Yeah, I thought, and then eventually they came out with the Lost Lands, but like I was like, screw that, I've already got this all set up in Roll20, like 300 pages of like dynamic lighting and tokens, like. So
Hmm.
like a lot of times when people come to me, they're like, "Hey Rob, you want to run a game?" They always come to me when they ask me when they ask me to play, they always want me to run. I'm
Oh
always
yeah,
like,
I
so I'm
got
like,
it.
"Yeah, well, guess what? I'm gonna run because it's already ready."
That's cool.
So that's why I've ran it. I mean, before the days of that, I didn't. I would run it in person, but and then I would choose it because I was just familiar with it, and I just knew it so well. So
Hmm.
that's how I got. I would say that's how I got into OSR gaming was
Yeah.
because. So even though I've played modern and older versions, which I have, I really liked Swords and Wizardry for a very
Hmm.
long time. It's sort of like my go-to, and I played that that and probably the Osric the most.
Yeah.
Those two
Neat.
Matt Finch systems. I'm a big Matt Finch fan. I like
Yeah,
his.
it's great. Yeah, he's a amazing guy. I mean, he's very humble, great to talk to.
Yeah,
That's why I like North Texas. Yeah, so,
yeah,
it's small, so you can meet people, and
yeah,
but large enough that you never get bored. There's always something to do.
yeah.
That's
Yeah, no,
pretty
so
cool.
I guess that's it. I've tried out other like I've been playing Shadow Dark a lot lately because that's what people are running, and a lot
Hmm.
of times I go to conventions, that's the only time I get to play right now because I'm just
Yeah.
too busy. But
Well.
but that's kind of it. I've played around with a lot of my own. I own most of OSR products. I read them all, and then I've been doing that for a long time, just like most people in the OSR.
Yeah.
They buy all these different games. They only run one.
Nice. So what inspired you to jump from just GM and world builder as the hobby to Gods of the Forbidden North, and you're making your own thing, or what? I mean,
Uh, yeah, well, so I mean, I've been the eternal DM. I'm four. I just
yeah.
turned 43 in May, so I started playing D&D maybe when I was like somewhere in 9, 10, or 11. I don't really remember now. It's kind of hazy,
Mhm.
but somewhere around there I started playing. So I've been playing a long time. I got like and I've always been the DM, almost every time. And
Yeah.
so I'm a very good DM. I usually have a lot of energy. I usually most people I play with say I'm one of their best or best DMs they play with, and
We have to arm wrestle about that one.
yeah, let's do it.
I do call myself the geomologist after. No,
Well, maybe you're better,
no,
but I'm pretty good.
no,
I'm
I
pretty
bet. I mean,
good.
you do seem to come with a lot of energy and fun, and that sometimes that's a challenge, right? But you always gotta be up. And I know there's days where I've long day at work or disappointing day, but I got that game in the evening, and I'm excited to run because it's hanging out with my friends and
Yeah,
getting to be creative. So yeah, I think I totally get it. To being
yeah.
the GM and
And I've
yeah.
had I've had bad games. Everyone's had them, right? Like, but I think overall, like, I'm very prepared. And it's because
Mhm.
so familiar with the material because I run it over and over again. It's so big that I can start them in a different part, and it's like a totally different game, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've always been like the go-to guy, and I guess what happened was is I was doing ser I'm in academia, like you were saying. I guess you
Mhm.
were.
Yeah.
Uh, I teach. I'm a professor, and I was publishing. I'm a creative writer by trade.
Oh wow.
I was writing fiction, like novel writing and screenplays and poetry, and that was sort of what I did. And I
Hmm.
teach that. I've taught it at Penn State. I've taught at University of Delaware, University of South Florida. And so I teach game writing and tech writing and business writing too now. So I teach all kinds of writing, different to very, and they're all very different, they're
Hmm.
all very different. But they're like, oh, you can write, you can do it all, which isn't necessarily true.
Yeah, it's very different. Yeah, trying to write creatively
Yeah,
versus like writing a scientific paper.
yeah,
For me, it's always been a challenge, right? I end up bullet pointing everything instead of,
yeah,
writing, like a how in a way, though, I mean, we'll get to it, I think, but like I definitely I feel reading through Gods of the Forbidden North. I mean, that background shows because it's very teachable, or you could teach the game to someone as you go through the adventure for sure. I mean, so anyway, we'll
yeah.
probably get to that, but yeah.
No,
So,
no, that's great. No, and it's not perfect, like I'm. The thing is, it's so big.
mhm,
Uh, you need like usually books as big of a team of people, and
mhm,
then so like one guy never gets it right all the time. And you need that extra feedback to get back, and I don't usually have that. So like I'm just
mhm.
doing this. So it started as a passion project, and
Okay.
um, and what happened was I was making like twice as much as I'm making now. I was making a lot more money at another job, and what happened was is I was bankrolling on the side this game, this Gods of the Forbidden North product, as I saw it originally, and
Mhm,
it's just sort of like a passion project that I did on the side because I like D&D. And what had happened was is I had been writing serious literature and serious poetry and doing all that. And what happens is I started not enjoying it over time.
mhm,
I felt like I was writing for other people and not really writing what I loved, what really moved me. Things I wanted to write don't get published, at least the general avenues. So I got a little jaded and I got a little bored, and I got ADHD, man. So like I start looking for the red light like a cat. And what happened was I just started doodling when I got bored of this crap, and I would just start drawing maps like I always had. And I drew this whole like mega dungeon, which isn't Gods of the Forbidden North, actually. It's a different thing that I kept, and I'm going to turn that into a
all
product.
right.
But I'll come back to that. But
Okay.
I was drawing it, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I started writing up some stuff, and then I drew this fort in the swamp.
Mhm,
And I started writing about this fort, which turned out to be chapter 7, I think, for the bog ruins of Fort Eichenvar. So that was the first thing I wrote about Gods of War. It was just supposed to be a generic, like Crucible Freya style, like keep battle, you
mhm,
know? And I actually modeled it off of very loosely off of Crucible of Freya. Crucible Freya, if you actually zoom out and remove all the story details and just look at it as a framework, it's this giant epic battle that you just don't see in any other product, and it's so much fun. It's always been one of my favorite ones to run because
Mhm.
it's like a bunch of second level characters versus like 30 orcs and an ogre. And like no matter what you say, that's freaking epic, you know? And any version of the game I ran in has always been like nail biter.
That's
And
cool.
but it's always cool because the players forces them to get inventive because they're fighting something, and no matter what system you use, if they even have CR, it's way
Hmm.
out of their CR range. And then what happens is after if they win and they get inventive, however they do it, they're like, "Wow, we just did this amazing thing. We got a level, whatever." And then they turn around and they have this amulet and they start searching around the keep, and then it turns into a horror scenario. And they start going down deep into the earth and they're like, what the hell's down here? And
Hmm.
it is always a really memorable back-to-back set of adventures, like or scenarios that my players they take with them wherever they go and they talk about for years. And I got really good at delivering and doing that, scaring the crap out of them right after they got this huge heroic epic I'm badass. And it was always so funny. It's almost like humbling. And so I designed my fort to be the same way in that rough sense.
Hmm.
It's this giant battle with slavers, a lot of different ways tactically you can take on the slavers. There's supposed to be lots of them. It's, an overwhelming force if they just ran at you all at once, right? So you don't do that. And then that's one of the islands. And there's a bridge that's been blown up to another island. And that other island is this horror scenario.
That's cool.
So that's how I came up with this. And that was my original beginning of Gods of North. I didn't call it that at the time. It was just the ruins of Fort Eichenvar. That's what I called it.
That's
And
well.
I got the name Eichenvar off this
Ah.
half-orc bad guy to Goodman Games product of Castle White. So I was like,
Oh
yeah, Fort
yeah. Oh
Eichenvar,
man.
little
Yeah,
shot
that's
of Goodman.
coming out.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's cool. Yeah, yeah, I've seen yeah, Crucible of Frey. I think I like that juxtaposition because I have, there's like products like Hordes of Dragon Spear. I remember there's a dungeon scenario where you have to help a fort fight off a bunch of lizard men.
yeah,
I think it's in the worm the adventure path where you have to fight the sons of Caius and the sons of Caius. The worm returns or something like that. But but then usually you have this fight and then you like move on, right? And that's it. That's the adventure. But yeah, so Crucible of Freya, and then I guess your chapter 7
yeah,
here. Yes, it is Bog Ruins of Fort Eichenvar. So
yeah.
in here. So looking forward to that. That's really cool. What struck me about I mean, I'm gonna tangent you
That's
here,
fine.
but what I thought was cool, and I don't know, a couple things that even just looking at the layout. So I love that you put the experience and treasure not only in the table of contents, but even at in the intro, like how, what's the projections, right? That players should get. I think that's really great to keep track. And they might not get all of that. I mean, right, it varies depending on random encounters, but that's kind of like I guess a milestone or is it? Do you feel like it's a goal or a milestone or I guess it depends. If it's a dungeon, right? That's what you kind of get. But then on the hex crawl, it varies clearly. I love that. That's great. It really helps the GM prep or the DM
Thanks.
prep. And then I love the intro, the first adventure where you kind of make the character as you go. I know I read a lot, haven't read everything, but I have not seen that uh, often, and I don't think I've seen it at all, really. I'm sure someone will come in and say, "Oh, but actually, blah blah blah." But I have not seen it. I think that's really cool. I mean, how you kind of go
Thanks.
about doing that. So,
I ripped off Skyrim. Every, but that's actually the thing I get hated on the most. Whatever people criticize.
really,
Yeah, they're like, oh, it's not really OSR, and it's just it doesn't really work. But every time I've ran it, and the people that have talked to me about it that ran it, not
hmm
read it, came back saying how much fun it was.
it's totally the OSR aesthetic, in my opinion. Right? It's the emergent. It's emergent. Right? You don't come with your preconceived character. Oh, I always play barbarians. I always whatever. I always play dwarves. I always, you just run with it and you don't develop your character until, the end of that first section of the chapter. I think it's cool.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate that. I had fun when I ran it. I mean, my players loved it. I just like the other day I heard from a guy who said that his players were having a blast. And to me, it's like what I and I go back again, going back to my experiences. I always feel like, and it was kind of like Wizard's Amulet inspired. It's
Mhm,
like I feel like having the party already together, already with a mission, really speeds things up. I know people love going in the tavern, but
mhm.
to me, like it's always a slow first session when you do that. And it's and you the
Yeah, what
if
do you
the
want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? Right. It's
You're
like,
right, and
where do you want to
players
go for dinner? I don't
awkward.
know. Where do you want to go for dinner?
Yeah, no, and when it's like you're already traveling down the road and you're about to get to the dungeon. Oh. And then you attack them right away. And
Yeah,
then like usually the fight gets them where they're okay, we're brothers now.
yeah.
Like, and I mean, I'm sure I have things I want to go back and probably tweak it, but it works really well if you've all got a book for the rules or PDF or something.
Well,
Um,
it's avail OSC is
yeah,
available. I mean,
right.
on your
I, I
tablet,
have
even on your
I have
tablet or whatever.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I found in play testing that the only time it has problems is basically two things. One is someone shows up with their character made and they don't cooperate, like one of
Mhm,
those players.
mhm.
And two, and two is when the is and you've told them that basically you got to get their buy-in that they're going to all make their characters together and
At the
stay
table.
together.
Yeah, yeah.
What happens is it's not a lore dump because I spaced it out where it was like, here's a little bit of information. Now take a few minutes to do step one, and then you're all laughing, joking, eating peanuts, whatever. And then okay, guys, and then you do a little bit more, and then you do a little bit more. And what happens is when you play it that way, and everyone plays exactly like that, and it only works if everyone has a book.
Mhm,
Uh, because if someone doesn't have a book, they're standing there staring and drooling at themselves, and then it kind of breaks down a little bit. But
mhm.
so I'd say that's my criticism is that I probably want an alternate version of it where if someone always shows up with characters or pre-gens, I would speed it up to where there's that one section where like they all stand around, they'll pull the eye out and they'll talk about it and gasp.
Mhm.
That would just be my opening, and you're dropped off of Valkengard Go. I
Yeah.
think if I did that kind of scenario, and then it would still work.
Mhm.
But uh, but I like, and I think for solo play, I didn't really think much about solo play when I designed it, to be
Mm.
honest.
Yeah.
I don't- I've had some solo players who've talked to me now, and they love the openings. Really great for solo play. Really, really
Oh,
great.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
So,
Yeah. That's a good idea. I I'm trying to convince players, you know, because I have so many
yeah.
games, but yeah, it'd be fun to even to like to highlight it and show it. So that process would be pretty fun to do. Right. And then really you get like session 0 and session 1 all together, I
Yeah.
think.
Well, it's like I said, you get to learn a little bit about and it explains why you don't know the world.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So I was
Although
trying
I
to
guess
kill
I
all
guess
those stones, all the birds with one stone.
yeah. Well, what if you want to play like a character who's native to that area, right?
That's where it get a little
The
tricky.
Tlingit uh orthologs, right? Um,
But it's OC, so you'll probably die, and then you can just make the native.
I mean, I guess they could be on the boat. They could be on the boat too, right? I mean, it's not a
Yeah, I think I had one of the pre-gens was like in Inaruk who basically left for some reason at some point, but
yeah,
then he decides
came
to come
back.
back. Right. So he knows a little bit more than everyone else, but it's been a few years.
Yeah,
So
that's good. Yeah, they could. I mean, someone can who's creative. Most of us
yeah,
are can figure
yeah,
out why if they really want to play that, that culture or whatever.
right.
Right, cool. All right, so you started with this one adventure or site really and worked that up and then it expanded or is that
No, I put it away.
yeah.
I put it in a drawer. It was like
Mhm.
9 years ago, maybe almost
Oh
10.
wow.
And I put it in a drawer and forgot about it. And I think a year or two went by. And then what happened was I was leaving my desk at one university and going to another
Mhm.
uh, right before summer. And I was cleaning my desk out and I found it and had forgotten about it totally.
Wow.
I just stared at it and I said, "Did I do that?" Like, you know what I mean? Like it was like that. And
Hmm.
I started reading it and I was like, "Wow." I was like, "This is pretty good." Like,
Hmm.
it's just as good as anything that can be published out there. And I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna start working on more of this."
Oh
So
nice.
I had this, I started thinking about it more. I went back, revised what I had the first time, and then I started like saying, well, what's around it? And I started slowly developing, and eventually, like I started coming up with all these ideas, and then I had to answer like, well, because as a novelist, right, you'll answer questions that you never even put in print, like
Hmm.
so like, that's what you're doing in the background, and so with your characters and such. And so like one of the things I did was I explored like, okay, well, where does this horror monster come from, and where does this come from, and why is this, and why is that? And I started developing this sort of like Silmarillion like backstory document.
Mm.
And there were a lot of things that didn't match up right away. And I had to start smoothing them out and going back to the original few things I had and fixing them and tweaking them. And then eventually they all worked. And then I realized I had the beginnings of a setting. And I was like, wow. And then that made me turn around and want to write the last chapter of the third book. And I wrote that next.
Mm.
And so I've known, once I realized it was a big work as a novelist, a lot of times you want to know where you're going. So a lot of times you'll start with the ending and you'll
Oh,
say, well,
interesting.
what do you want on the end? Like,
Mm.
where is this going? And I had a clear vision of the ending. So I wrote that ending years ago and I still have it. And it's cool. I'm really excited about it. And I started with that ending, and I've had that finished for years. And then I knew, okay, I've got this, which is close to the beginning, and this is the end, and a couple things between. Let's start getting ready to do this castle, because the whole idea was to make a mega dungeon castle with like its surrounding area. I
Hmm.
wasn't thinking 3 books. I was thinking Rapanathuk, like and it's more later versions, like where it
Hmm.
actually had a wilderness. And I was like, I want a generic plop down northern, roughly wilderness with a castle. And that was the idea. And what happened is the more and more I developed in the castle and out of the castle, the more and more I would stop and have to go develop this culture. And then, of course, that meant, well, if I develop this culture, now I need to have more villages that are out there in the wilderness that are remote. And then that turned around, you know what I mean? And it just, well, and so it just grew and grew. And what happened was, if I lost my job, I had basically been at a nonprofit and it had survived through, it had survived through the COVID thing.
Hmm.
But at the end, it was like downsizing time. So like,
Mm.
I got let go. So then I was like, crap. And I'd bought all the maps at once for the whole thing back then, except for a
Mm.
few maps that I had because things got created later. But most of the maps, the core of the maps I've had from all 3 books were done years ago. And I was just like, and I had painted the vision of these maps to my cartographer, Billy. And I had said, look, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of like Conan Destroyer's like ice castle with like Castle Grayskull slash Snake Mountain thrown together. Here's what I'm thinking, and I would tell him what I wanted, and I want towers, and he would come back with sketches, and I would say, yeah, that's great. Hey, do this, or whatever. And so we had this back and forth. And so I'd already gotten all those maps done, and I'd had some of the content written, like I said, a few chapters, and then some sketches of the world, and a lot of stuff was starting to come together. But once I lost the job, all my disposable income that could have funded this without a problem went away. Now I had to
Mm.
go back to academia as a professor, and my salary got cut in half. So I was like, okay, well, all right, I can't afford to really pay this out of pocket as much anymore. It's harder. I won't be able to do as much. So then I was like, you know what? I've been hearing about Kickstarter. Let me give it a shot. And I sat down and I started studying Kickstarters like an academic would. And I was like, is there a formula? How does it work? And I figured it out. And it was all these different documents and articles, and nobody has it all in one place.
Mm.
But I turned around and I basically like figured out and pieced together all the advice and then just looked at a couple of case studies of really successful ones and said, okay, I think this is what they're doing. And I didn't totally get all of it, but I got enough. And then what happened was I went out there and I started, I had a little, from the nonprofit job and from my job as a professor who teaches writing, building argumentation a lot of times. I understood how to persuade people, and I also understood how to do nonprofit development work because I had been trained in like how to do like big mega donor stuff with
Hmm.
like profits, which accounts for like a big percentage of their pull-in. So I turned around and I used all that knowledge with just the other stuff I had already done, and I went and I bought a really nice piece of art that I knew that since I had already decided I was going to do an OSR product. And I was like, I want to do a really good artist, spend some money so people think I'm professional. And I've been published, I just haven't done it here. So I have to
Mm.
kind of bridge that gap, right? Because nobody knows who I am. So I got Ian Bagley, and I got a couple pieces from him. And then I got, which I knew people would recognize from Hyperborea. And then I turned around and I basically like got Terry Venata, who is a friend of mine's husband, and he is a Hollywood concept artist. I didn't even realize it. And I did the amazing covers for all the
Mhm.
books, and so the color cover, and then Ian Bagley's pieces in my write up. I followed the formula and I did 35 grand, which is really good on a first Kickstarter. Like most never hit 10. A
Mhm.
big chunk of the big percentage of them just fail. That's like either 40 or 60%. I think if you get to $20,000, I think you're in like the top 10 or 15% of all
Oh
Kickstarters ever.
wow.
Like it's actually people don't understand how hard it is. And so for me to get 35 grand, which it's funny, I was so excited about that. Like I was so blown away. I thought I'd be lucky to hit 10 and I didn't think I would succeed. And when I got 35, I was like, wow. And like I've gotten two bigger ones, much bigger ones since then, but they didn't blow me away. The way I knew they would succeed. I just didn't know exactly what the number would be.
Hmm.
Uh, I've refined my process. And so now I've raised over $300,000 through three Kickstarters for all three. My last one was 170. The second one was like 108-ish. And like I've got a best platinum seller. Volume one is a best platinum seller on drive through, and
Hmm.
volume two just hit gold about a month or a month and a half ago, something like that. So
Yeah.
I'm doing really well. I've built up a nice backing of people who seem to enjoy the work overall, and a few thousand people. So and I give them all my cell phone number. I I'm pretty like, very accessible because I'm a professor. I'm not really a businessman, so it's funny. Sometimes I'll have backers who are real businessmen. They'll come along and slap me upside the head and tell me I'm doing this wrong, I'm doing that wrong, and I'm like, yeah, you're right, because I don't know what I'm doing. Like I'm wearing all these hats, and I'm
Yeah.
pretty good at it. But there's some things that's my probably my weakest area is business. But I've figured out at least how to raise money and keep going forward and not fail. So
Yeah. There you go.
but right now I'm not even really concerned about making money. I just want to make enough to make it the way I want it. And that's it. That's really I want to finish the three books, do it right, and
Hmm.
just make it a product where people are like, wow, that's a really great book. Like I can't wait to run it.
Yeah.
That's
That's awesome. Yeah. So
kind
let's
of
talk about the third book. And I
yeah,
think
sure.
that kind of leads into kind of a topic, right? Because the third book is the castle, right? Is
Yeah.
the castle that you hint at in the first book,
Yeah.
Tharganon. So it's like
Castle Thargargan. Yeah.
Castle Tharganon. So effective. It's a mega dungeon.
Yeah. Yeah. If, depending on who you're talking to, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's 733 rooms right now in the draft.
Oh, geez.
So it's
Yeah.
big.
Yeah. It's big.
Some people would say that's not a mega dungeon, so whatever. But I think that's a mega dungeon. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
and that doesn't include the caves and stuff underneath it that I'm not counting as the castle.
Mm,
There's another like 400-ish rooms, if you want to call it that, encounter areas in the Cyclopean city, the Lost City, ruined city, cave that's underground, that kind of thing
yeah.
from like shit. There's that. I mean, then there's the final chapter, which is in the Tesseract of Time, which is
Yeah.
where the big ending is. So the one I wrote years ago, but
Mm.
which is crazy because I'm about to sit down and start revising that for the
Yeah.
first
See how if it
time.
jives with the rest, right? See how it
It
fits
does.
in.
Last time I read it, it was really cool. It was
That's good. Yeah.
working. There were a couple things I wanted to change, but
Yeah.
not. But yeah, that's what I've been doing every day. I wake up about 4 a.m.
Hmm.
Usually working by 5. That's using the coffee shops open. And I've been pumping out about 3 to 4 thousand words a day, unless I
Okay.
get interrupted. So
Mm.
and by other stuff or I gotta go do this for half the day or whatever. Go to the
Right.
beach.
Mm.
Really, really important stuff. Let me tell you.
Yeah. So
But
for us novices, what is 3,000 to 4,000 words a day? What is it? How many like quote
that's
unquote
a lot.
pages?
That's a
How many
lot.
pages would that be?
Well, if you're using MLA formatting, like
Yeah.
double space times New Roman 12 point,
Hmm.
about 275 words is a page on average.
Okay. So about 10
So,
pages you crank out.
that's
10 to 12. Yeah.
let's say 3,500 divided by 275. So yeah, 12, 13-ish. Yeah,
Yeah.
something like
Okay. Well.
that. That's pretty good. I think like Stephen King does like 1,500. So I think if I read that right. But I
Mhm.
pump out a lot. I think it's probably because it's a game.
Yeah.
Some things are easier about that, and some things are not. But like
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that I'm doing a lot of work every day and pumping it out. It's hard. On one hand, it's easier now. It's also harder. It's easier because I've gotten, now that I've done this twice, first book was 480 pages, second one was like 530.
Mm.
Like now it's like, oh yeah, I got this. Like I know exactly what's required. I know approximately how much work. I know what's going to happen at each phase because I've done it
Yep.
twice.
Hmm.
So in that sense, it's a nice, well-oiled machine in terms of pumping out stuff. On the other
Yep.
hand, I get a lot more emails. I get a lot more stuff I have to do. And
Mm.
so there's more things pulling me, so it ends up balancing out, I think. So you almost have to get better because or else you'll slow down.
Yep.
So, but yeah,
Mm.
that's what I'm experiencing right now and I'm at that crisis point almost. I don't want to call it crisis, but I kind of reached that this last couple of months. I was trying to fulfill volume, but this is my fault. And this is
Mm.
again, I'm learning as I go. I was trying to fulfill volume two while launching volume three and
Hmm.
starting my semester up with two new preps that I never taught before. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, woo! It was a wild, wild semester. Let's just put it that
Mm.
way.
Yeah.
I have been burned out, but like I can't stop because I got too much to do. So I'm just kind of trugging through it and trying to rest when I can and go. And but I'm at that point in my career is demanding a lot of time from me, and I have to still do it because I don't actually make enough yet, profit wise,
Hmm.
to be able to just stop and just do this full time. Because then I get so much more done, right?
Yeah.
But that's where I'm at right now. So I feel like I'm being pulled into like half. So
Hmm.
it's tricky. It's really tricky to go to deal with that, So I think after the third book's done, I'm going to take a break. And the way I'm going to take a break is by doing a conversion of the entire book, because to me, that'll be easy.
Yeah.
Creating it, like it's just like, oh, I'm just going to go back and reread it all over again from page one to page 1500. And I'll
Hmm.
start making notes about things I want to like tweak and and it'll be like,
Hmm.
compared to what I've been doing, it'll be a lot more. And I'm not going to do anything like Kickstarter wise till it's done. Like, so I'm going to basically spend like a year not doing anything, working on that.
Hmm.
That'll be me resting with no deadline over me.
Right.
And the book gets out there, and then probably then I'll come back and say, okay, here's my conversion. I'm going to launch it and it's basically ready to fulfill.
Hmm.
And it's basically a pre-order and that kind of thing. Because I'll probably take all the profit from the sales of volume three and one and two because it bumps those two up when the next one comes out. And I'll probably take that and use that to buy everything. So it'll just be more like a pre-order of how many do I need for the
Right. Hmm.
and uh, and then basically like that'll be very easy. And then I fulfill it. It's over. It's a 3, 4, or 5 month tops like process. Everyone's happy. Then let's go to Overlords of Steel, which is
And
going to be
that's
the
the
apps
world.
I told you about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the world, right? Yeah, that we talked about. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool. So what do you think you know what you want to convert it to, or are you just still studying that out to see?
I'll be honest. If you asked me that yesterday and then asked me the day before, I'd give you different answers.
Yeah.
Because I think right now, I'm not, I don't view me as like an insider, even though I'm a publisher. I have my head down writing.
Hmm.
I don't pay attention to anything going on
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the world. Like someone was like, "Hey, did you hear about Iran?" I'm like, "No."
Oh
You know,
no. Yeah.
I don't even care. Yeah, I'm too busy, and like, so I don't really know much about the industry to be honest, except what I've dealt with directly.
Hmm.
So originally the idea was to kind of copy like a Frog God Games, like a lot of them do, like a 5e conversion. But now with like just all the talk out there, I mean, 5e is still huge and financially it makes a lot of sense. But Shadow
Right.
Dark really has my eye.
Hmm.
Really, really like the system I've been running. Every time I play a D&D game lately, it's been Shadow Dark,
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
either because I've been invited to it or people have asked me to run it.
Hmm.
And it's a really nice system on both ends as a player or as a referee from my experiences. I've really liked it. And
Hmm.
I guess the only thing I'm at is like it's because it's like, OSC is like BX and you got 5e over here. And I feel like Shadow Dark, I hope I get this right. If I'm wrong, just tell me. Feels like a mix between BX and 5e. It's the best way. If I had to describe it in one line. Feels like she took the best parts of like an old school like type game like BX
Hmm.
married that with like some of the better things from 5e and kind of
Yeah.
made her little combo.
Yeah,
And
there's some DCC thrown in there too, right? So for
yeah,
example,
yeah,
roll to cast, right? So
yeah. No, you're
yes.
right. You're 100%. Yeah. And so to me, when I did the, I did
Yeah,
it,
it's Kelsey Dion, by the way, for those of us who don't know, who
yeah.
developed Shadow Dark. So that's what we're talking about. All right, good. Sorry.
No, 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 you're fine. Yeah. So like, uh, what was I gonna say? When I did the conversion, I've ran recently, I've been running like chapters of my book at conventions, and I use
Mm,
Chef because that's like the hot thing. Everyone wants that, and it's pretty easy. But I felt there was enough of a conversion when I did it that it might actually warrant a conversion. And so
mm,
then I was like, originally I had this idea of like, well, if what I said is roughly true, BX, Shadow Dark 5e, maybe it makes sense to do a Shadow Dark conversion and then a 5e one, almost like a bridge,
hmm
and then, there you go, right? And then, but then another part of me was like, what if I do this? I actually had this thought at North Texas. I was like, what if I do one that just has all of it together? Like it's just sort of an omnibus edition with all three logos on it.
Huh.
And
I
it
don't know
just
how.
has all the stuff right there. And I come up with some kind of clever layout trick to where it doesn't clog things up. And I said, that sounds like an idea. I've seen other people do that with like two systems.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't even have to do OSC because I already done it right by that point. Maybe I just have to do like Shadow Dark and 5e together. And then I'd have a simple Kickstarter where it's like, if you want one or the other, you just ask. And then I see which one's popular. And then I go,
Yeah.
oh, that's the one I need to do, like that kind of
Yeah.
trick.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I think at the end of the day, 5e is still huge and just blows everything out of the water. And the joke is, and the one thing I will say about the industry, the joke is like you do a 5e conversion of one of your books, and that pays for your next five OSR projects.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And I can say that all the money I've quote unquote made,
hmm
I haven't really made anything. Like it's all gone back into the
Back into the
product.
product. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the profit margin, like I could have made decent amount of money actually if I had both known what was going on and understood it and had done a lot more work myself. Like if I learned my own affinity slash InDesign, if I only used one or two or three artists and got them to do a bulk deal where they are paying less, I'm paying them less per piece, but they're getting more overall.
hmm
That actually there's like little tricks you can do to save a lot of money. But
Oh,
I didn't figure those out until it was too
the
late.
third. Yeah.
And now I'm stuck
Oh,
because
right. Because you're yeah in
the
deals and
production
stuff.
value, right? It's the same. I have to keep it the same. So like I'm just like, okay, all right, fine, whatever.
Uh,
So I'll just blow all this money on art. That's fine. No one can complain. So,
That's
but
funny.
so that's kind of the idea is both a recharge and a way to like actually make a buck will be these conversions or conversion.
Yeah.
And I also want to do a VTT because I think that is the way
Okay.
to actually get a lot of people playing your book.
Yeah. I will be converting. I mean, I'll be DIYing it to roll 20. That's usually what I do. It's just
Yeah.
that's what I'm familiar with. So, but
Like if you
some of the plug and play like Foundry or you know and and Fantasy Grounds, right? So those are like although some people also comment that those are kind of more like video games. I don't know. But I like a good balance between theater of the mind and
yeah.
let's give us a relative idea of what's going on so people can have at least some spatial reference and then imagine. I think that's usually what's kind of cool. All right, so I want to get back to the mega dungeon now that we've
Sure, yeah, yeah,
gotten your.
yeah.
All right, so I guess it makes sense because you kind of cut your chops on Rappanathic, right? So how and since you've run it multiple times, how then, um, assuming you're the expert, how do you successfully, yeah, sure. How you can use air quotes, but I mean you've run Rappanathic multiple times. You've created, this vast dungeon. So how do you successfully run a mega dungeon based campaign, right? So do you have to, all right, so I guess the first and I'll ask another question. So to get to Tharganon, do you have to run book one and book two first?
Well, I mean, theoretically, you could pluck it out and drop it in. I mean,
Okay.
There's going to be lore stuff you're going to have to either alter and fit to your world or just ignore.
Hmm.
It's just the way it goes. I don't think it's generic enough. Like, I'll say this of like Rapanathuk, like, there's not a big meta story going on in the background. It's like there's evil cultists
Yeah.
and they're evil. Doesn't even really say much about how they're evil, just they're bad. And like that's great. I think it's
Hmm.
fantastic. There is a story going on here. It's a little more involved. But I guess like could you ignore it? Sure. You can ignore a lot of it. And it would lose something, but maybe it doesn't. That's not a big deal because if you're running things real loosey-goosey, you still have a blast, that's
Hmm.
awesome. I did make it very cohesive just because of my novel writing background. That's just the way it is.
Okay.
So I've got 15, 1,600 pages of stuff that all fits together, I hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm doing a lot of work on my own work
Hmm.
to make sure that there's nothing that screws anything up. But yeah, it's so I guess when I started designing a mega dungeon, I guess I'll tell I mean, I hope this answers your question. If it doesn't, stop me. But I basically here's my process. I'll tell you
Hmm.
how it went. I of course understood this was this bad guy's lair, his home. And I was like, this is the big bad guy's home. Like his fortress slash home. This is where he has everything that means something to him. So in terms of like his character as a writer, this is where I get to like get across him. And I haven't
Hmm.
really yet. I've gotten across him some little touches here and there, all
Hmm.
throughout the first two books, obviously. And you've encountered him more by the second book indirectly. But really the third book is really it's all about him, really. It's finally all about him.
Hmm.
And you get to kind of get into his mind, go into his thing. So to me, when I think of a dungeon, a mega dungeon, to me, there's a couple of principles I start with. It's, one, it's got to have lots of entrances. It's got to have multiple ways of going through it. It's got to have like, lots of different areas that have variety. It's got to have roughly, not, it doesn't have to be perfectly scientific, but it's got to have roughly the 1/3 rule, like, a third monster creature slash, and that could be fighting or social. It could have like a third of something interesting, like a puzzle trap or whatever. And then maybe a third of nothing, which is really window dressing.
Hmm.
That's still interesting, but it's really nothing in terms of like, the other things which are more mechanical and all that. And
Hmm.
then, and so I kind of had those as my very rough rule. And I turned around and I said, okay, what are some other things I want to do? Well, I really like games like Legend of Zelda, and you can pick any version. I like it when you go or like Doom 2. And like I love video games, like, especially old ones. I
Hmm.
was really big into them. So to me, like Doom 2, you run into the level and like think of like the more not the like the lean not the linear levels, the more open ones where like you
Hmm.
have a bunch of different ways to handle things, but you got to get that blue key. And you see the blue door like after like 2 seconds, and you're like, I can't get in there, and you're annoyed. And you're like that it's nagging on you, that blue door is back there somewhere. And you're like, I gotta get it, what's in there? And you start looking for this blue key, annoyed. I want to create that. They do
Hmm.
that in Zelda. They do that,
Yeah.
and all
In
those
order to advance, I need to
yes.
find, yeah, the MacGuffin.
No, and what happens is like you have to start making like a big map of
Yep.
like first I need to go get this key, and then that'll allow me to go open here. But what does that open up? And then of course, so you come up with like a rough linear, like okay, get the A, get the B to get, but then you're like, okay, I don't want there to be one right answer. So now how can I make it even more flexible? So you
Hmm.
take that and you revise it again, and you say, well, let's make multiple ways to skin each of these cats.
Hmm.
But there's still like a way to do it, but maybe there's a few different ones. Maybe there's two different kinds of keys or two different ways to get into that room. Maybe what you do with that thing that's in that room could do three things, and you don't have to do them in order. So then I start turning around and doing that. And I'm doing these major overview things like okay, this gonna be, where's gonna be. I don't know what's anything that's in between them or roughly what's in like this region of the
Hmm.
castle is roughly this. This region is this. I don't know what's exactly in there, but this is my idea. Then I turn around and I say, okay, now I need to go through and say, once that's all kind of loosely established, and that's gonna change. But then I turn around and say, okay, now I'm gonna go through and say, what were all these rooms before the skull god vanished? What were they originally? And then once I go through and give every room, all 733 rooms, what its original function was, Then I say it's been 20 years. What's happened to it since? And I go back
Mm,
through all
mm,
733 rooms and I say, this room and area has been untouched because there's a barrier of magic or whatever. But this area has been ravaged and it's not even recognizable.
yep.
So maybe there's like a little MacGuffin or trinket that suggests this was a bedroom, for example,
Mhm.
but it looks like a war zone, or slimes everywhere, like
Yep.
so like the basically that's what I did to make it as compelling and believable as possible. I went through and I did it in those phases. And right now, I have basically given every room what its purpose is multiple times. I've gone through and roughly said what monsters are where. I have developed all the factions, and that's the third component of factions, making
Hmm.
factions
Oh yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, the
So from
Janelle Jacques faction dungeons. Yeah, it's great.
and Thracia was another one I like to run a lot. And I was very inspired by that product, and that's why there's a cave under the ground.
Nice.
It's not reptiles, but
Yeah,
there's gonna
yeah.
be some reptiles maybe.
Yeah,
But anyway,
sure.
maybe
That's
fun
neat.
guy,
Well,
fun guy.
like that's always a cool thing about the Mold Bay before the Lost City, right? It just gives you the double pyramid and actually only gives you the top parts, and then the bottom parts are like outlined, and the city, I mean, is completely blank. Although the OAR product kind of fleshed it out, but I think it's great to have all that, together, right? Or I mean, and all this, obviously, all this stuff is malleable to a creative GM, how
Yeah,
things go. It just, you want playability. I think you want player agency as well. If they want to brute
right,
force their way through it, sure, but there
right,
might be consequences, right?
right.
So
And so when I was my major four factions, there's more than that, but
mm,
there's minor ones. I kind of view them as major minor.
that's
Is
cool. I like that.
I have the Arctic giants. I call them the Trow, Myth the Fallen Lords. This is where
Mhm.
Trow is a word that's not it's not something they can IP, but like I definitely was inspired by them. And my giants walk up and kick people and they explode just like Myth.
Mhm.
No, totally. That's where I got everything's inspired by something. That's fun.
Nice, but
Uh,
sure.
yeah, and these giants, the Trow, are basically in the castle, and they're searching for this thing that's in Volume 2. Actually, it's
Mm,
not in the castle; it's below it. It's in the underworld because Volume
yeah.
1 is the surface and the wilderness. Volume 2 is the underworld, and then Volume 3 is just that one hex with everything down, the castle and everything underneath it, and they all kind of connect up in different places, right? And so what happens is there's this group of Trow that are trying to find something called the Skull of Garstag. And it's sort of like my Skyrim shout out. There's a
Mm.
skull and an ice wall. You know what I'm saying? If you guys know, you know. So
Yeah.
I wanted the skull of Garstag to be like this Trow champion needs it because he's going to learn from this warlord's ghost that he's
Hmm.
going to summon with it how to fight and kill Stalin Vladimir, who's the ruler of the Black City of Morgothar in Volume 2, and he stopped obeying the Arctic Trow kings.
Hmm.
And so there's actually internal warfare between the Trow themselves.
Oh,
And so
cool.
he's just there to get the skull. But guess what? Some of the castle's too small for his 18-foot tall self.
Yeah,
So
so
he's
he's got to.
like, crap. Yeah, I need smaller people.
Mm,
So then he looked over and saw this other faction. And the other faction was led by a guy called Bowmans, who again is a little bit of a Glenn Cook shout
hmm.
a little bit. So Bowman's turns around and he's a Draugr Doomlord.
Hmm.
And basically, like he's been resurrected from Volume 1. You find out about him in Late to the Barrel of Eight, and you think he's a minor character. But
Hmm.
actually, he showed up to Castle Tharganon, took over half of the undead that are still there, and has turned them and called them the Tiger Knock Renegades.
Hmm.
And so he's like, I'm the Skull God now. And he takes over the throne and the main tower and he's fighting the lingering, and the lingering are the other undead who are still loyal to Balor. And so
Hmm.
what's happened is those two undead are fighting it off, and they have areas. And so what happens is the way I've envisioned it is that Bowman's is the harder guy to deal with. You can deal with him, but he's like, okay, if you go do X for me, basically go get the thing that the trial wants me to get, and I'm going to take credit for it.
Right.
They don't splash me. You're gonna go and do that, and in exchange, I'll let you pass through my territory for like once a day, and I will move you straight to the other side, drop you off safely. If you come back, we kill you.
Mm,
He's a badass, He's like he's got to be tough. He's trying to assert himself. Then the other guys, the lingering, I wanted to do Planescape Torment, where there's like an undead city where you get to walk around and buy from the zombie merchant. So
yeah, it's
they're
kind of fun.
actually, yeah, they're way easier to deal with. they're like, you can make a deal with them, and they're just like, help us get rid of this usurper. And we're all like, eh. And so there's going to be like almost like a city of the dead that you can just go into if you play your cards right.
Yeah.
Even if you're a lawful cleric, I'm designing it so there's no like you're able to get in some way, one way or the other, if you want.
Hmm.
Um, and then there's a fourth faction. That's the two-headed dragon, Gleeok,
Hmm.
and he's looking for his horde. He served Balor, and Balor stole his horde from him, the Skull God, and put it in one of his vaults, and he can't get to it because he's too big. But what happens is he's been sired by a demon, one of the Tarngrak, Amarok. So
Hmm.
Gleeok is Amarok's son. And so that's why he's Uber Dragon. He's not a regular dragon. He's two-headed and he's badass. Sort of like a Demigorgon
Hmm.
like dragon. So he scares the crap out of the Trow even. He can kill them, although they all together might be able to take him. But he never comes out and does that because he's smart. So what happens is he used to serve Balor, and so the lingering kind of obviously are still loyal to Balor, so they kind of do what he says, even though he doesn't really care about Balor. He just doesn't tell them that.
Yeah.
He just wants his treasure and he wants to bail. But he it makes it seem like that. So there's all this like dynamic where you can get them to play against each other, and there's all these different relationships. And then there's Dolven Watch, which is like a guild of high-level adventurers that have staked out some hidden caves that were
Mm.
used as a sally port by the Skull God that everyone's forgotten about or didn't know about. And so that's a place that you can go to, and the two guys, the two adventurers that found it, kind of like a Hamlet shout out, you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like those two guys have connections to some of the adventurers, like Soliana from the first volume, and they were all part of the same group. And Taff and Larry, the guy who saw the barrow where Bowman's burst out, he was part of that group. So there's all these NPCs you found out. It's all coming together, is what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say.
that's
So
great.
the idea is like, how many different ways could you play this castle? And even if you're not high enough level, because I'm trying to design it with high level in mind, the whole thing. I want it to be a 9+ castle theoretically.
Wow. Okay.
But I also want it where a low level part could go there theoretically and survive if they're smart because it's not all meant to be combat. I don't want it to be a big hack and slash either.
Hmm.
So and I feel like right now I'm accomplishing it. I feel very, very
Great.
happy about what it is. I'm very pleased with what I'm producing. I'm
Hmm.
reading it going, this is going to be so awesome. This is like what you always wanted.
That's nice.
That's
It sounds really fantastic. Yeah,
thanks.
I did back the Kickstarter at the PDF level,
Oh
so
yeah,
yeah.
thanks.
So I'm looking forward to it. So I think I was. Did you? I think you sent some extra. I thought you had some extra things that you sent for the
VIP.
first two volumes because we backed the anyway, which was really cool. So I appreciate that. So
Yeah.
yeah, so looking forward to that, and then eventually, getting as I save my ducats to get the hard copies because they're always fun to read through. It is definitely still hard for me to read a PDF. So and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that sounds fantastic. I do like the idea of a dynamic dungeon, nothing static. And I know I have had some a lot of most players enjoy that. They like a dynamic dungeon. They like dealing with factions. It doesn't always have to be a fight. I think that's sort of the Rapanathic conceit as well. And that's if you listen to Jason Weeb, Dungeon Plunger, he interviewed Bill Webb recently, and Bill corroborates that. So that's great. So that so faction play, you don't have to fight everyone. You got to be smart about it. Not and also I'm sure, like you said, the third of it's gonna be puzzles and traps. So you got to watch your step, which is great. So it does seem like there's like multiple playability, which is also great because you're not going to solve the problem at the same time. And then there's places, as you described, to you have to go. You don't have to trudge back to the main city. I guess at that level you'll be teleporting too, but you don't have to trudge back to the main city, and there's places to like camp out and stay there, make some, kind of carve out your own little niche in
Yeah.
the mega dungeon. So I think that sounds fantastic. I hopefully I'll remember to put at the a little intro at the beginning of this. Spoilers ahead, beware, right? So type of thing. Because you did we gave some spoilers to the adventure, but that's kind of why we do these things. That's awesome. All right, so I guess the last question, if you want to, maybe, you know 5 or so minutes, maybe less. The project after the conversion sounds pretty fascinating, where you're kind of developing your world book, correct? Is that
Yeah, so it's kind of I guess to give the short version,
yeah.
it keeps going back and forth between either being more of a setting slash rule book, like the way Dolmenwood was, or like a can't like a Arcana Evolved, like this is for the same system, but here's some new classes and races.
Okay.
That was one idea I had with it. The other
Mm,
idea is I just do another big adventure book of another part of the world, like,
okay.
but this time not three, just one.
Just one. Yeah.
And then what I would do is just going forward, do one a year.
Okay.
Um, and just eventually I would have like kind of like the Elder Scrolls thing where I've developed every continent
Yeah.
and they from the beginning were meant to be connected.
Hmm.
That was my so Overlords of Steel was the idea was that this actually takes place in the ravages of the Red Death,
Hmm.
and that's down in the old Imperial lands that have, of
Yeah.
course, basically devastated civil wars. It's turned almost into like Dark Sun, where like there's
Mm,
all these city states with evil dudes, the Overlords of Steel, the
yeah.
Cosmic Steel, which Cosmic Steel appears in volume 2.
Oh,
Uh, so the Cosmic Steel, that's actually in the Overlords of Steel. That's where it came from. And basically, the idea would be it's sort of like a Mad Max slash Dark Sun kind of, everything's gone to hell and there's no
yeah.
central, and it's much more dangerous than the North in the
Yeah. Sounds
sense of
great.
marauders and
Yeah.
such.
Great.
But yeah, that was sort of the idea. So I haven't decided on
That was waiting for you.
Yeah. I'm in an interview.
that. She's good. What's up?
What's up? That's my wife, Amy. She plays a lot
Hi,
too.
Amy.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I guess my dog Atlas wanted to come back here. He likes to come back and hang out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
What kind of dog?
there's a Lusky. It's a Husky Malamute mix.
Oh, cool.
Heterochromatic. He has a brown eye and a blue eye.
Oh,
So he love he no, he doesn't really love. He doesn't like the heat. So he we let you got to let him out because they like to wander around and smell the the area, get some water because we have like a water fountain for them outside. But then I just leave him out there about 10 minutes or so at a time because he shed all his like winter coat, his hair
yeah.
everywhere, but it's still hot for the husky. They like the cold,
Where you live? Do you
in San
mind?
Antonio, Texas.
You're in Texas. Okay,
Yep,
gotcha. I wasn't sure.
yep, yep, yep.
I'm in Florida right now, so
Oh,
I
nice.
hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm down in Tampa during the fall or excuse me, the summer and the winter when I'm out of teaching. So and then I go
Oh,
back
okay.
to Delaware
Oh,
for the
neat.
summer. So usually we're here about 3, 4 months a year.
Oh,
So I've been here for a couple weeks. I'll be here till the end of August,
oh,
and it
that's
is
cool.
wonderful. I've been working on my tan. The Texas, North Texas RVG was like my let's get used to this hot weather.
Yeah, it's pretty warm. It's
It
pretty
was.
warm.
The first day it was okay.
Yep.
Second day I went out to get something at that truck and I was like, oh, there it is.
Yep.
That's Texas.
Well, that's great. So, yeah. So, unless you have any questions for me, Rob, I mean, it's been great to converse with you, talk to you, hear about the Kickstarter process. That's pretty fascinating. And then to hear about your creative process and then discuss a little bit about how to make a mega dungeon work. And I'm looking forward to seeing how Volume 3 develops and continue to dive into Volumes 1 and 2. And my goal is to get them to the table. Uh, and highlight them on our Geomologist Presents YouTube channel. So
That'd be awesome, man.
yeah,
Thank you
it'd be
for
great.
having me on here.
Yeah, thanks for a great conversation at North Texas. Hope to see you there or at any other conventions you might be going to
So
this
right
year.
now I'm scheduled to go to EggCon for Ernie Gary Gygax, I think put on by Heidi Gygax, I think.
Okay.
I'm supposed to go there, not as a
Is,
vendor, just
is that
going
in
there.
Wisconsin? Is that
Yeah, up at Lake Geneva.
okay?
And that one looked really cool. There's a lot of actually cool people going there.
Okay, cool.
I'm excited about it. And then the second one I'm
When is
going,
that? I don't,
that is at the end of July.
okay.
I think it's the week before the big one, whatever the Gen Con or whatever. Or
Oh yeah, Gen Con is in early August. Yeah.
yeah. I think it's like a week or two before that. But
Okay.
and after that I think I'm gonna go to Page 3 in Philadelphia.
Oh, sounds
So
fun.
that's not till January. But
Okay. Yeah, that's nice.
I was going to go to another one, but it didn't work out on my schedule.
Okay.
I guess the last thing I want to throw out there real fast is just I've got about 300 copies of Volume 1 and Volume 2, the offset run versions, the premium
Okay.
edition that are in my through my Shopify store.
Hmm.
So Shopify, if you guys go Pulp Hummock, like hammock but with a U, hummock is
Hmm.
a hill. And I live in Kitts Hummock, Delaware. That's where that dumb name came from.
Uh,
Paul Pommick. That's right. I didn't think it would be anyone would know it. So like I
hmm.
was, I shouldn't have named it stupid. But anyway,
Oh well.
it is what it is, right? Yeah.
Right.
Paul Pommick, yeah, if you go to paulpommick.com, you can order the books there, or
Hmm.
email me at robert@paulpommick.com, and that's
Cool.
the best way to get a hold of me. And last thing I just wanted to say was that the Cyclopean City, which is the big cave under the castle,
Mm.
has 26 dungeons in it, tower dungeons in it.
Wow.
It is massive, and they will be fully detailed. So this is
So
a huge.
huge book. Huge book.
I think I'm at 1,010 pages right now. I think the last
Oh
one
man.
was five,
You're gonna
six
have to
hundred.
break it up into like volume one and two.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
are you
Volume 3 and 4. Sorry,
yeah,
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 fourth
yeah.
volume. No, I'm gonna fit it in a three. Trust me.
No, I know, but like the books itself, 1,000 pages is
Yeah, that's the
right.
first two. So
Yeah,
the
you might
last,
have to.
I think the only other product that's as big as my page wise
Hmm.
is supposedly the what was that? The world's
World's
biggest,
largest dungeon.
yeah, whatever it's called. That they claim to make 15, 1,600 pages. So we'll see final product. Who's got more
Yeah.
pages?
You have
But
to look at my I have to look at my I have the PF1 version of Greg Bond's
yeah.
Slumbering Czar. So I gotta check to see if that how big that one is.
The real biggest one is Ardenvool, Richard
Yeah,
Barton.
that's huge. Yeah.
If you look at his text, his manuscript is much bigger than either of ours, the me
Mhm.
or the it's just, but page wise, I might be able to say I'm the big second biggest,
Yep,
depending on
yep.
but
Cool.
Ardenvool, if he did what I did, he'd be like 80 volumes. So
Wow. Yeah, he put a bunch of volumes. Yeah, that's great. That's
yeah,
true.
I love Richard's work. So I
Yeah,
always
that's
want to
great.
him and Bill, they got great products.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again so much, Rob, for joining me today. And
Sure.
so you guys, I'll put all those links in the show notes that Rob mentioned. Pulp hammock, pulp hum. I see. Want to say hammock. Pulphummock.com.
Just want to lay back.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you can lay back. You just pronounce it hummock instead of hammock. And Rob is definitely very gracious. Like he said, he has the people that follow him. He gives out his info, and he definitely likes to chat.
Social security, checking account. I mean, whatever you want, you know.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, definitely go check out everyone. Gods of the Forbidden North. You can find it on drive through if the page, this huge book scares you. You can find it at PDF on drive through as well. And like Rob said, he has the offset print of the volumes one and two, and three is in process. So, all right.
We'll be
Thanks
done by
again so much, Rob.
yep,
And
take care.
we'll see you at a convention soon, I hope.
Hey, thanks so much, Carl.
All right. Bye.
See ya.